Good morning, Joshua, and welcome back to Tea Time with Angels. How are you doing today?
Oh man, I'm good. I'm excited to be here again, man. Like we got a lot of good responses from that first episode that we did together. So I'm excited to be back here today, especially with today's topic, which I'm gonna let you talk about. But first, how are you doing, man? I seen we were talking a little bit earlier in the week, and you kind of had gotten an illness. And I just kind of, I guess I'm getting called to hit on this. I've seen a lot of people in the classes I'm taking kind of, come up with one of these sicknesses over the last couple weeks. And I had the feeling that that was coming because I started to see it a lot in my awareness. And, do you feel like that was ascension symptoms? Because it was right, we didn't talk about the Atlas whatever that is. That's your expertise. But do you think that was related to that? I just had that question pop right into my brain, so I got to ask it.
I feel that it was. I'm really just now getting over the lingering cough, but I was diagnosed with a bronchitis infection. Um, so that was like spanning from about the solstice to over New Year's. And at least the cough was. Um, yeah, that was definitely a reset. There's like at least a whole week or more when I was just drowsy from that. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, that was definitely an energy reset. I so that sort of started actually right after, I guess, 3i Atlas passed by us at its closest point. Um, but that was still like 100 million miles away. Anyway, yeah, that's um, I could speak on and on about 3i Atlas. That was
Sounds
definitely.
like a whole other episode, huh?
Oh yeah, we could do a whole episode about that. Um, but I can say that was definitely a spaceship, and it was not even just a comet. Um, it was a complex spaceship, a large one. But it was projecting also a hologram around it to create a partial appearance similar to a comet, um, to wake some of us up who are paying attention. Anyway, let's get into
Yeah,
today's
very cool, man.
discussion.
Yeah, man, I'm excited.
Um,
So take it away, my brother.
Yeah, so what we'd been talking about a little bit in our conversations, and yeah, what came up is really space clearing. And so that's something I've quite a bit of experience with, especially since, well, really since I started learning Reiki, but also because I live in an old apartment complex that was originally military barracks for World War II operations. And so there's actually, I understand, quite a few deceased spirits at my apartment complex. And it was only after I started learning Reiki and applying protection around where I live right now. And Spirit actually taught me a specific technique that um, things stopped moving in my home.
Yeah, I mean, like being in those higher trafficked areas with a lot of history like that, you'll definitely pick up on a lot of old energy, a lot of spirits.
Hmm.
I So yeah, what's a little bit about your process? So would you say it was mostly discarnate souls that were kind of wandering the hallways and kind of finding their way in before you did, worked in tandem with your team to put up the protections?
It's honestly hard to say exactly who it was. It might have been some of the more friendly. I think they were friendly. Just spirits who used to live here, people who used to live here. And maybe some of them were soldiers, some of them were, I think, wives of soldiers who lived here and families and people who died here. Um, I know that there's also Native American spirits here, from before it was really colonized and before they were pushed out. Um, So it's hard to say who was actually moving things in my apartment, but there were times that like I'd go out to a job I was working at the time. My wife and I were both gone. The apartment was locked. Um, Sometimes heavy, even stone items were moved like in specific ways. Like there was a tile a decorative tile I used to have, that was sitting like up on a radiator heater on the wall, and it was placed directly on a specific spot on one of my altars when I got back. There was also another day that I came back home. The apartment was locked. Nobody could have been in here. Um, Maintenance or nobody else from the apartment ever comes in here. And I came into the kitchen and opened the cupboard to find that where we keep the plates and bowls, some of the bowls had been placed in the other section of the cupboard where we keep the drinkware, and some of the cups and drinkware was placed into um, the area with the plates and bowls. And so nobody would have done that, but it was kind of funny actually. Kind of a funny placement. They were playing with us. Someone was trying to get our attention, I think. There was one dowsing thing that I did with somebody else at the Ghost conference, and some of the messages that came through happened or seemed to indicate that it was actually more of an ancestor spirit of either my wife or I that was getting our attention or trying to. And they didn't really get specific messages across to us, but they were definitely a bit playful with that. And so then it was after I started learning Reiki in November of 2022 that part of Reiki, especially the Western version I was taught, but I think it's also in the original Japanese teachings that you have to set up kind of protection around you, cast protection around you. It's also ideal in either the home or if you have an office space or specific spaces that you do Reiki in, that you cast protection around you before you start the session. And so in my initial trainings, when I was just doing it on myself, I'd be casting Reiki energy protection around my apartment space. And then it's probably my angels or spirit guides that anyway, someone t sort of it was implanted in my mind, but a specific technique that was given to me um, to set up protection around my space, and they told me to place basically a stone in each corner of each room. Um, they recommended tourmaline, black tourmaline, and so I bought some raw chunks of it and cleansed it, blessed it. Um, then imprinted each one of them, the whole lot, with energies of home protection, and then placed it in each room of my home after actually a specific process also I was taught and sort of adapted um, for additional space clearing before that. And it was only after I started really getting serious about casting protection around my home that everything stopped moving. The little objects and things in my home stopped getting moved when I was not looking or when I was away. So it really works.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to hit on that a little bit. Like it's very important for people doing deeper level spiritual work, working with spirits, people that have already kind of lit up on the astral, such as yourself. One of the things that I see a lot in my work is when people are bright lights, then there's energies around that are a little bit more attracted to that, especially if they're not embodied, because they're like, hey, this is probably somebody that can see us. So, like there isn't a lot of boundaries, right? Like it's huge to have it's important to have boundaries with spirit. And it's really like what you were talking about with Reiki and setting the sacred space. It's making your whole home that. Um, I will tell you, I've run into a lot of weird stuff. I do a lot of home clearings. It's funny. I got sage with me, and it's funny. I don't. Sage is at this point. I feel like an overprescribed antibiotic. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? A lot of people put a lot of, um, they put a lot of thought into sage being one of those things that's just going to automatically clear everything, and I can tell you that is just not the case in my experience. There's a lot of things that have always been or are immune to it at this point. Um, so one of the things that I do use sage for is, when we were talking about this, the idea for the podcast episode was how to protect your home and then also invite in those beautiful energies to create that energetic container that you want to be in. Because that's, like your home is your sacred space. Like this is a place you go to rest, to relax, to do what you want to do, and you want that to be filled with beautiful energies, and that's personally what I use sage for is after I will do the clearing. And I clear my house pretty often, any space I'm in. I've been on the road for quite a while. So I have a few different methods I use personally. One, I use warding methods, which is more on the energetic planes. I can't really get into specifics because, I teach this in the magic and mystery school I teach at, and it's one of the reasons I'm not, it's not that I'm gatekeeping, it's just that ethically I worry about the people that I work with doing something and then not having them someone to walk through it, because it is a little bit more of an advanced level practice.
Hmm.
But like I've been traveling a lot. I've stayed in over 200 hotels this over the last year, and to set that up in every place I went just was ridiculous. So I did something similar to you. I used tourmaline and different protection stones and things that were conducive to the energy that I was wanting to invite in. I actually have my traveling bag with me right now. So, but it's
Yeah,
it's important. It's important to set
it
those sacred
is.
spaces.
I want to say a couple of things based on what you just brought up. Um, but the tourmaline technique, um, theoretically, it could be used for traveling, or maybe a set of tourmalines could be brought with you when you're traveling. Um, Spirit actually told me that um, I just need to place the tourmalines in each corner of my home, each room, and set up the grid. And there's a little bit more to it, but then when I move out, when I leave, then I should first um, take each stone, clear that, clear each of them, the whole lot, and then bring it to my next home. And so, yeah, it is something that um, it's kind of like a witch's tool, really. You want to be conscious of it and actually continually blessing the stones when you update. And I do it daily, but yeah, update and reinforce the protection around your home, so that then that's like a constant living tool, and then you take it with you, um, because that's really kind of personal to your energy, and it becomes stronger with your energy as you're working
Yeah,
with that. I also want to speak on sage a little bit, white sage especially. So many people in a lot of even YouTube and social media, and also in-person spiritual circles for a long time, especially the New Age spiritual circles. Um, I've really used white sage quite liberally and casually, I would say, but it's never been an herb for banishing evil spirits or getting rid of evil spirits or negative energies necessarily. What white sage is, just like you said, it's an antiseptic physically as well as spiritually, but it's not just pure white in color, it's a little bit on the gray scale. And so it's actually a balancer of negative and positive, and it's a neutralizer, which is why it does also have the effect of kind of like I think of as shooing away um, some negative spirits, especially some of the lower level ones when you use it and when you smudge with it, because it brings your energies into balance. And so then there's not heavy negative energy that spirits are attaching to anymore. And so that feels
Yeah.
good, but it's a neutralizer really.
Yeah,
Um,
I agree with you. You know, I think the importance of talking about sage is also talking about how important is intentionality in that work is, right? Like anything you're
mhm,
doing, you want to do with that intentionality. I mean, it's one thing to just light up sage and take it around and, and willy nilly. I'm speaking from my personal journey on here. Like in the beginning, I was like, look at me, I'm saging everything. You know what I mean? But there was
mhm.
no intention behind it. It made me feel good. And it began the process of intention and ritual. But, it's important to like call in your ancestors and your angels at the same time to usher out any of those negative energies. But like I think it's so perfect to talk about sage right now as you were talking about the crystal grids you build, because you can take something out of your house, but if you haven't created that energetic boundary with spirit, they just wander back in when the smoke's gone, right? Like this, and then you just wait for your vibration to slip a little bit to kind of start messing with things. That's been my experience anymore. They
Yeah,
kind of they'll leave, but they're like, well, you never told us we had to leave for good, or like you don't
yeah.
have a. It's like the front door is still wide open, right?
Thank you so much for saying that, Joshua. And I wanted to get into that topic next. Um, is personal vibration and your energy, the thoughts, words, emotions, as well as beliefs, behaviors that you have going on as patterns within you. It all needs to be worked on for space clearing, especially of your home and of your life. Um, just like you said, you can sage and you can neutralize your energy for a bit with white sage, with just like casting a nice intention um, for clearing with a ceremony. But that's all going to be wasted if what's inside of you and the words you say to people, the music you listen to, um, the beliefs you have about yourself, as well as the cleanliness and condition you keep your home in, your local space in. Um, if that's not in check and all being somewhat intentional and presentable to others, then those spirits are just going to come back to you. And that's the same effect that I've observed time and time again over the years, and that I've taken more seriously in my demon banishment work. That um, I can remove spirits with my angels from people, and um, that works. And demons, even some of the darker, older demons, get removed. But if the person doesn't truly want to improve and they don't do the work, they don't start to shift from within, then they're going to call that spirit back to them if they have the same energy residues, beliefs, structures, um, words, and behaviors going on. Then that's all going to magnetize and be the same. Basically, you could think of it as an anchor or an outlet that the spirit's going to plug back into for them. Conversely, if you do some of the inner work, some of the hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, bit of shadow work. Not too much shadow work, just like we touched on in the last episode, but
We
some
did touch
shadow
on that.
work, maybe a course in shadow work. I would recommend actually with a therapist or a person at first, who knows what they're doing, not just some idiot, like some idiots I've worked with who like bring up some of your shadows and get you triggered, and then there's some release that feels good, but then they don't truly like set you up and release you and let you go in a state of light. Um, yeah, you want to do your shadow work and then some intensive light work, um, to really replace any traumas, patterns, inner shadows that you've worked with that have come up and that you've healed. Then you want to replace that with light. I offer hypnotherapy, and mostly right now, though, I do Reiki, energy healing, and entity removals through peaceful rain. But yeah, hypnotherapy and psychotherapy, I think, are essential for a while. Um, do your inner work, do your shamanism. There's so many ways of
Yeah,
doing these. Egyptian mystery school is also a highly effective system I've found. Um, Working with Egyptian gods and goddesses. Um, Doing some, I don't know, ritual ceremony work with angels. Um, I could go on and on talking about what works, but yeah, you want to do
yeah.
your inner work, because your home space is going to be the energy that's also in you.
Absolutely. And I think, you hit on something beautiful there, and it really ties into the importance of clearing your home. You know, a lot of times when people step into this work, it's because they finally have come to the realization first, like they might not be able to see the energies, the entities, the parasitic things that are, like, we can run across in this work. They might not see that, but on a soul level, they know that they need to get away from it because these energies will just keep nipping at you. Think of it like like you're just trying to walk and this dog nipping at your heel and it's just hitting on your weak spots, right? It's hard to get yourself grounded when you feel like you're under attack all the time. So, by clearing your home, by creating that safe and sacred space, what you're doing is you're giving yourself enough room to actually invest in finding emotional and energetic safety through the inner work. The in the courses that I teach, the process in which we go is stage one is finding emotional and energetic safety, where we look at, fear, anxiety, worry, dread, inner and outer judgment, and then we go into working deeper. In the second year, we work with our elements. We learn the elements. We learn how to find our voice, find our purpose, and then 3 years in, that's when we start doing shadow work. Right? Like it's shadow work's messy, man. Like it's messy. You definitely want to get there, but you definitely, you want to find somebody that really knows what they're doing, because it's easy enough to trigger somebody, but how, if you can't help them find the root of it, or at least walk with them while they are figuring out how to excavate that core of that wound or that trigger, you can, a lot of people enter shadow work and end up worse off than they were when they started, and it's one of those, you know, fancy terms right now. Everybody wants to do shadow work. It's like, well, what other work have you done? Like, I would start with stuff that's a little bit, like we're like this, like clearing your home, clearing your personal energy field, learning what it is that's attracting these entities before you start digging shit up and bringing more into your life. Because that's
Mhm.
kind of what that process is. It's facing those shadows head on, on the inside, and that can also reflect in your external reality at the same time, based on what your belief structure around that is, or how far you've shattered the illusion of what this reality is. Things can get kind of weird out there, kind of like you were talking about bowls moving around and stuff like that. Like that would freak most people out. For people like us, we're like, oh, that's weird, we're gonna have to do something to fix that. Right? Like, um so but I just want to bring up one more thing about the sage, because it came up. This particular one is dipped in dragon's blood, and
Mm.
if you are looking to bring certain energies in or remove certain energies, like you can use essential oils. If you I have an amazing book called The Complete Magician's Table, and like in it, you can find a lot of sympathetic magic to use with earth magic, right? And you call it witchy, I call it earth magic. Same thing. We're all just it's just pulling from earth, it's pulling the properties and what it's been used for and the archetype of what that offers, and has for a long time. So, like you can use different things, like liquid. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a way to liquefy tourmaline. I know somebody that liquefied moldavite. So, I mean, there are certain stones that you can, spray on your sage and things like this. This isn't something that I work with a lot. I just happen to buy this. I do most of my stuff completely on their energetic planes myself at this point. I don't work with a lot of what I did when I first started. I don't do a lot of home clearing from inside any place unless it's my own space. Like I do a lot of this from outside in my own sacred space while I'm clearing things. Since we're talking about clearing things, I'm sure you ran into this as a banisher. What kind of things have you ran into outside of demons in people's houses, if anything? I mean, like you've done a lot of Reiki work and a lot of powerful work with people. What are some of the occurrences that you can share with people that you've came across?
Yeah, good question, Joshua. I guess a lot of the more specific experiences and especially for space clearing, um, really are from my own life. Um, are you asking more of what I've run into with entities in the home and um,
Yeah, when you're working with
spaces?
people. Yeah, I mean, you do a lot of your work virtually as well, or I mean, I'm sure it's a blend.
Yeah.
But running into that virtually, have you seen them also attached to people's houses or different type of entities? Like I think we're gonna get super woo here, but I run into things like portals and trolls and discarnate
Oh,
souls.
yeah.
Like these are all things, and like the energetic architecture of a home. If there was a family that lived in the home before where there was a lot of, say, violence, a lot of arguing, a lot of, just a lot of lower vibrational, very heavy energy, I found that
Mm-hmm.
that can also permeate into the walls too. One of the
Mm-hmm.
things I do is I mean I talked to things. I took that from Dr. Hugh Lin, who taught a lot about the Ho'oponopono prayer. But he would, when he walked into a hotel room, he would thank everything in it and just say thank you, as part of that, like bringing a higher vibration to the area. And that's one of the things I do when I help people clear their home is I will help them set intentions and continue to work on the energy of the home, not just like it's a one and done. It's a constant, it's more of a constant appreciation of all that is around you. It's like a deeper level of gratitude just shown to the external reality.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, thanking and interacting positively with a home space definitely makes a difference. Um, especially when there has been a past of um, negativity and heavy drama. So that actually touches on kind of a similar practice, similar way of interacting with spaces and buildings and things that my walkout was taught since he was like 16 or 17 from a woman I haven't spoken to in years, but she's a medium in Seattle. Um, and anyway, she um, actually helped start to teach him telepathy for the first time, especially communicating with like stones and spirits at first. Um, and so her work is, I think, still is, and was deeply rooted in ways of telepathy. And so what she would do and what she taught me to do is also speak with like the structure, the material structure of buildings and homes. And that matters because when you start to do that, when you open your especially third eye and mind abilities to telepathy, which is a muscle. And I'm also helping teach another young man this. It is a muscle that most people have absolutely atrophied through our very Marxist materialist society that also emphasizes only communication with the voice and no communication with the mind and other spirits and materials and living things, which can even extend to the home around us. But yeah, so it does, you do start to get feedback um, from even the structure of a building and a home. Some people get auditory telepathy, some people get visual um, as their easiest form. Some people just get senses and impressions and feelings of vibrations and energies. And so it's different for everyone, but yeah, that matters. And if you're curious also what has gone on or what energies are still being stored in the material container of your home, then just light a candle, sit down, meditate quietly, and ask to like communicate with your home, the energy, the spirit of it, or spirits within it, and um, surely they'll speak to you because chances are probably nobody else ever has spoken with them before. And then they'll start to tell you, ask you, or answer your questions if there's been violence in that home before, if anyone has died there before, if there's any rooms or spaces that are holding heavy energies that you maybe in your best interest to clear. Um, yeah, so that definitely matters. As to some of what I've experienced with entities and spaces and homes, there was one friend who I'm still in connection with. He moved out of state, but he's also a fellow walk-in. I met him after my walk-in, actually. After my walk-in, I started attracting and meeting more walk-in friends. But anyway,
Can you
so
define walk-in for me? Because I actually
yeah,
don't know that term. And
okay,
you said it on this
yeah,
episode, the last episode, and I was like, that's fascinating. I think I have an idea, but I don't want to project what I think
yeah,
my idea is. I want to hear it right from the source.
yeah. Thank you for clarifying that. So what a walk-in is a soul exchange, or there's I think about three different types of walk-ins. Soul exchanges are the most common. And I came in as an exchange into this body on November 11th, 2020.
11/11,
Um,
huh?
yeah, so that's already kind of a magical number that even my walkout when he was let go from a job on 11/10, he saw the 111 and knew that there was probably some synchronicity happening there. Something else was to come, but of course, nobody's allowed to actually know or the consciously know like when there's going to be a walk-in, when they're going to switch out. But it's done on a soul level, a soul contract, and that soul contract is usually written before birth, before the body's born. Um, and in my case, and I think other walk-ins, there's some sort of subtle and important preparations that happen before the walk-in to sort of set things up, to start clearing some things, to make way for the walk-in to make it hopefully a little bit easier. But there's always challenges. There's symptoms of walk-ins. I can talk about those, but essentially a walk-in is a benevolent um, exchange, or some walk-ins also are braided or infusion walk-ins where one, or even I've met some walk-ins who've had three braids or infusions, soul aspects from their higher self or something else from their soul family, another soul comes to join them, infuses or braids with their aura and their soul and energy. And so they literally um, sort of compound, combine, expand, and grow in energy and power and potential. We walk-ins always bring in energies from higher dimensions than what they're walking into. And so some of mine have been from Sirius, especially Sirius A, I think also Sirius B. Um, the a benevolent group of Gray and Mantis beings that I call the cohort that I still meet with. Um, Also, angelic realms is where I come from. So some walk-ins
Interesting. Thank you for
are,
sharing that, clarifying that. That's huge,
yeah,
man.
yeah. I've done whole like episodes, whole radio shows just talking about walk-ins. But yeah, so
Awesome.
that's a little bit about walk-ins. And so anyway,
Awesome,
back to
man.
the story I was going to tell.
Yeah.
Um, I had this friend over and I agreed to do like a hypnotic regression with him, a past life regression. The regression was very interesting. What I can say is that he ended up not remembering an embodied lifetime, but more like he remembered being the gaseous spiritual material of and spirit of a former planet floating in space, looking at its shell that had been hollowed out to become the spaceship that we call Nibiru. Um, there's a lot to talk about there, perhaps, but um, so that's what came through in the memory, at least part of it. And then after the session, after he left, um, I thought all was well, but then I sat down on the couch in my home where he was laying for the regression. And then I don't remember if they did something, I don't think it was physical or like external, but it was like, it was, I just felt really strange, alien, kind of disturbing energies around me. And so then I tuned in, and what I realized is that him being here and also opening that energy space and memory from other interstellar existences. Also, I think it's part of his, you could call it a monad or a posse that is just around him, but he opened a portal or portals in my space, and some aliens were coming through. And so then I had to um,
That's
tune
fun.
in, and I think I asked my angels for help, but we had to close the portals. And so you've got to be careful who you let into your home, what work you do in your home. Um, Also, if you're a professional, um, hypnotherapist, Reiki master, energy worker, um, if you have like your own healing space or office space, it's really ideal and recommended that you close the energy between each session. Um, and this actually happened time and time again, even when I was doing remote sessions. I believe, yeah, there was another time also when I was doing a remote hypnotherapy session with that individual that then I had another client pretty much right after that day. But this was also part of my lesson. I didn't properly close the remote session. And so what was quite surprising is some of the work I used to do is I would help people like go into their, you could call it a happy place, a personal space, inner space, but
Hmm.
their space that's like their happy place to return to in meditation and hypnotherapy. But it's also a hub where you can meet many different kinds of spirits and work with parts of their self. Um, but I forgot to close this one session with this very interesting walk-in individual. And so then I opened the session for the next client, and before she even got into her own inner happy place, some of these alien mischievous beings from the previous client already had gone in and pretty much ransacked and destroyed her space, her inner space. And so then what we had to do is I had to take her into a different inner space that was actually somewhere she'd been before, but in that new space, we kind of utilized some of the plants and elements from that actual geographic spot um, to cast like set up a border of protection around the whole area so that beings couldn't get in there ever again.
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff that happens, man. And I love that you're so vulnerable about it too. That's my favorite thing, and I think it's the future of like talking about this on a deeper level, a more conscious level,
Hmm.
practitioner to practitioner is, we all, I come from the school of fuck around and find out. And I know that I made
Hmm.
mistakes and that's what I learned from, right? Like, I had very similar circumstances when, like anytime I'm holding classes, I set up a sacred container, like I use the warding method that I was taught. And, I remember in the beginning, there was a few times, 3 days later, I'm calling, my shaman and I'm like, I don't feel right. Like I don't have any energy. I'm just drained. She's like, did you close your circle? I'm like, oh shit.
Hmm.
Close it, all the energy comes back, like because people are just walking through your energy field because you're bilocating when you open up those sacred spaces. You might have walked away from it, but as time is an illusion and we're all living in the eternal moment of now, there's a piece of you in that now that is still energetically connected to that moment on a very deep
Yeah.
level because you're the one holding the space. Uh, until you learn how to use other things to create that space too. But like it's a weird world, man. It's a weird world, and I love these conversations because we have the opportunity to tell people about what we did wrong, so you don't have to, right? Like this is why we have these
Yeah.
vulnerable
And
conversations. Like
I'm actually pretty sure that these specific experiences, just like you and I discovered, of how powerful it can be, also how dangerous sometimes, um, when you like do a ceremony, do a healing session, and then you open up so much, work with someone, even yourself, but especially with someone else, when you open up their energy, um, you could call it a realm or world, um, that they're personally connected with, then, and it's also within their psyche and mind, um, then you don't close that, and then you don't then cut off and like close the energy and just let them go free. Yeah, that's when
yeah,
things really start to happen, and that causes things to happen between you two. But I think that's also the same function and mechanism that probably ancient shamans also had the same fuck around and find out experience with. That,
yeah. I
um,
mean, like the world is changing too since then.
yeah,
Like we're all as we're coming into new earth, and whatever that means to everybody, that everybody seems to have a different philosophy on that means, and I don't even know. I'm so grounded in reality. I don't do a lot with the ET. I mean, I know my mission here is to help people evolve. So I
Hmm.
stay very grounded in this reality. But like one thing I do know is that things are different than they ever have been, and they're evolving very quickly right now. So a lot of us need to learn how to think on our feet. We can use a lot of the old ways, but it's also going to take a heavy dose of critical thinking, which they've been programming out of us for a long period of time now. So,
Hmm.
like it's, I had the pleasure of sitting with a medicine woman earlier this year, and we were talking about the systems as we approach, as we're actually in the middle of the shift right now. um, and nothing of the old can come. And I don't think that doesn't mean that we don't still use these processes, but these processes are evolving, right? Like I think any great teacher wants their student to outshine them. I know I do. Like when my two students come back, after, like a couple years, and they're like telling me, I was like, hey, I never thought of that. I absolutely love that. Like I've had students now help me with entities that I couldn't remove, mostly because they were on myself because I did a bunch of dumb shit at one point. I learned a lot about, you hit something right there about that two-way cord, right? When you're connected to a client, you really have to have that. There needs to be a boundary, and I didn't have that in the beginning, and then I didn't cut off at the end, because my when I started this work, I started just on the psychic end of things and doing energy readings, and more, giving people a blueprint for the next level of work to bring them into the next layer of their consciousness, right? To help them evolve on that level. And then when other things started showing up and I realized I could remove them, I really didn't have any good fucking idea what I was doing. And a lot of those things came right back at me because they were already in my space, so they didn't need permission to get in there. So, these are the things that we learn over time, and we learn to what not to do. I think there, Thomas Edison, I think he had that quote. Like somebody asked him, "What was it like to fail 1,000 times before you made the light bulb?" And he's like, "I didn't fail 1,000 times. I learned 100, 1,000 different things along the way." So,
Hmm.
then this is what we do. This is the work we're doing. And you know, I think it's important to remind people that like I just want to like validate your experience in talking to spirit to set up the tourmaline grid. Like we're all going to have a different way in which we connect. Now I will tell you there are certain things that have a lot more juice, but like lean on your team. Lean on your team. Like your spirit teams are here,
Hmm.
and when they're here to help. I mean, I will tell you this, and I'm going to tell this story because it's an important one about warding and the way that I work with it. So we were working with a student, and we had her, she had been talking to her spirit guides for 5 years. And then we warded the house, like she came through the program, warded the house, and all of a sudden she couldn't reach her spirit guides. Come to find out, she wasn't talking to her spirit guides at all for years. She was talking to a shapeshifter, a demon. So, these are the things, like this is the importance of creating that safe space. And if you're just not into that level of the woo, grab some sage, like set up the grid that Troy talked about, set up that grid, invite some beautiful energy, burn some sweet grass, just get in the ritual of bringing in that high vibrational energy of gratitude and thankfulness and faith and all of those beautiful energies that you want to create in your home, of prosperity, of abundance. You see what I do with my energy when I say these things? I pump it with the emotion because that's what I'm doing
Hmm.
in this room right now. That's what I'm doing. That's how we supercharge these things.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what I was touching on earlier is that it really is your inner vibration and emotions. Your emotions are charged magnetic energy moving through you and emotional charges that then can be triggered and repeated. But yeah, it is emotions such as joy and ecstasy. Archangel Sandalphon taught me the word resplendent joy. just really high, ecstatic, emotional vibration, celebration of life. It's actually that those specific states, joy and celebration for, it doesn't even matter what it is. A celebration just for the home you have, just for little things you have, just for the people you have in your life, or a celebration for an accomplishment, a graduation, something great, then it's that state of celebration and not just eating cake with people, even that can be a nice experience, but celebration is its own ecstatic vibration. And that's the point of having a celebration of any sort for your birthday or for anything, um, to celebrate life. And it's that celebration that's when God actually sees you. That's enthusiasm. Enthusiasm is derived from the word entheos, which means filled with God. And so when you're enthusiastic, when you're celebrating, that's when God, the angels, even the seraphim, higher angels, the Mahatma, higher levels of divinity, that's when they really see you, because that's when your aura, your emotions, your spirit are all converging into one conscious, super awake existence. And that is the
Oh, I
spark of
love that.
creation. And it's by celebrating that then the things you celebrate, that is what God, the actual creation of light, of ecstasy, of life, gives you so much more of that in amplified magnitude. So experiment with that. I'd really recommend for everyone listening to experiment with states and practices of celebration. And it doesn't even have to be like a specific gathering of people, but just a state of celebration and joy, and watch what life does for you and unfolds around you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, like I can tell you, I when I came into this work, I was in a very low vibrational state a lot of the time, even during periods of this work. You know, like
Hmm.
the faith was there, but I will tell you, you know, like when you get into shadow work, your joy will diminish for a little while, and you know, you got to lean on other emotions. You know, and gratitude is one of those ones. But you know, I think the big thing is realizing you're not the mind. You are observing the thoughts, right? And
Hmm.
when you can realize that what's generally coming up is just a response that has been imprinted in your awareness or in your consciousness, in your ego, and it is the ego trying to keep itself safe. So anytime those thoughts on the flip side of that come up, just challenge them or let them go. There's many different ways to do this. You know, like I'm a firm believer that we all have a different operating system. I'm a firm believer that there's many paths to the same result. So, you know, it's going to be a little bit different for everybody, but you know, challenge those lower vibrational thoughts. Bring that happy energy that we've been talking about in this episode into your place. Set up that grid. Bring in the energy of prosperity, of abundance, of love, of joy, of happiness, of community, if that's what you want. But also be careful who you let into your fucking house, right?
Hmm.
Because that can bring it down real quick. But you
Hmm.
know, like all of these things, you know, like all of these things go into creating that beautiful container that you're, you know, I'm guessing most of us want the same thing, you know, and on a soul level, I believe that we want to experience that joy and happiness. And, you know, this is why we start to work on the energetic planes along with the psychological planes.
Yeah. And I would want to say quickly that it's actually joy and enthusiasm for work you do, for parts of life, gratitude and happiness. These positive states are actually what life is for. And that's not to say that there won't be moments of, um, some maybe despair, some suffering, some other heavy stuff that happens. But I believe that life is actually for cultivating enthusiasm and joy and ecstasy. Um,
Absolutely.
and so, yeah, that's what this is about. Just like you were saying, we've all been taught, especially since childhood, these ways, especially from our parents and peers and teachers, ways of suffering, of focusing on the low bits of money that we are given, um, focusing on people mistreating us, abusing us, and the ways that we were abused in the past. And it's really, like you said, the mind is powerful. All of the mystery schools and esoteric traditions of the world will say that everything starts in the mind before it becomes creation. Just don't believe me, explore, and you'll hear that over and over again. But yeah, it's really the mind that and the attention of where you are repeatedly focusing your attention on your story, on what people told you is your story, what people told you you're not worth, what people told you're not capable of, told you that you won't have. That's exactly what you're creating and summoning to yourself. You are enough. I love that. Yeah. And so, um, just a tidbit that you also hear from hypnotherapy, psychotherapy, shamanism, esoteric traditions. It is the story that you're cycling in your mind. We all have so many stories actually based on how we're like victimizing ourselves, how we're really posturing ourselves to identify with what has happened, or also say that, like, speak by ourselves that certain things that happened actually happened for our favor. It's the words that you say, the your attitude towards your story that actually changes your reality and changes how much money is flowing into your bank account. And once you do certain manifestation practices, in my experience, your bank account starts to grow and grow.
Absolutely. Yeah, I
Often,
think you said something there. And you know, you were talking about stories, and it reminded me of a quote I heard by Sadhguru. And he said, 95% of the world is suffering something that already happened or hasn't happened yet, instead of just being right in the middle, right here, in this
mhm,
moment, and it's in that place, you can start to create that beautiful reality and sacred space in your home and in yourself. It starts with that.
exactly. Well, thank you very much for joining me, Joshua. This has been, I think, an hour now.
Yeah,
We've
we
been
can rock
talking,
these, can't we?
but where can people find you and work with you?
You can look me up at JD Radwan on Facebook. It's J.D.Radewan on Facebook. You can reach out to me on Messenger there. You can look me up at awerewolfenterprises.com to book sessions with me. I do discovery calls for anybody who's looking to get deeper into the work. I talked a little bit on the last episode about the 4-month courses I teach in finding emotional and energetic safety, where we begin to learn some of the warding processes, talking to your spirit guides, and beginning to unwind the first layer of the stories, about, working with fear, anxiety, worry, dread, inner and outer judgment, and beginning to banish those, so the things that we end up banishing can attach to begin with. So that's where I start to work with people. So if this is something that you're interested in pursuing, just let me know, and I'm happy to take a call with you, and we'll see where it goes.
Awesome, Joshua. And I think I'm on lesson 2 and 3 about of your 6-week course. And I'm noticing shifts already within myself, my life. Just like you pointed out earlier, I went through this bronchitis illness, still have a cough that is just now. clearing up finally. Um, yeah, really it does shift things within you, but for the better. And you'll notice as you do the light work with Joshua, um, and in life that when you start making way for light and for creation, all of the darker, heavier things, people and groups and things within you will start to come up to be purged. But yeah, Joshua is definitely a potent but very deep um, shamanic and visionary teacher.
I'm a Scorpio, so we're deep divers, you know. And this is the way that I see it, right? Like we have all of these threads, all of these stories, and like you can try to pull these, you know, one at a time, but they just get stuck. And the way I approach it is we start just pulling on all of them a little bit at a time,
Hmm.
so they just go right. And this is, you know, I had the privilege of learning from people that have over 70 years invested in this work and are, you know, one of them is a doctor in transformation. So,
Mm.
you know, I've been blessed to really have some great teachers that have helped me and understand the process of creating ritual, which these courses are, you know, and it's a ritual to you to get you to where you want to be. So that's the beauty of this work. You know, it's work with intention, and that's, you know, what all of my courses start with is the power of intention.
Awesome. Thank you for the explanation, Joshua. That definitely is what it feels like. Um, myself, I go by Troy J. Bacon on Facebook, Peaceful Rain on YouTube, also Troy J. Bacon on Substack, um, and Instagram. But especially here on YouTube, the Peaceful Rain channel is where I post these Tea Time with Angels. Um, Joshua and I have quite a bit more to talk about, I know, but
Absolutely. I just want
yeah.
to give you a huge
Uh,
shout out on the Barachial and Jesus activations you just did, because I listened to them both, and as soon as I turned on the Barachial, I mean, like I just felt like, you know, like I've it's been a while. Oh, I can feel it now just by saying that. I could feel that, you know, that beautiful energy coming down through. Um,
mhm.
yeah. So I mean, I Barachial's a very cool archangel to work with on a lot of different fronts. And then Jesus, we all know and love Jesus. Go check these out. You guys
Mhm.
got to check these out. Don't take my word for it. Check these out. I always tell everybody this, for better or worse. I will never recommend anything I won't try myself first. I've tried these; they're amazing. Do them.
Mm. Thank you, Joshua. Yes, my angelic invocations on this channel, Peaceful Rain. Um, that's actually a type of work that I do a deeper, longer process of invoking with in my angelic Reiki sessions. And my private sessions with angelic Reiki are really what I do for demon banishment, and they're 113% effective, I say. So far, nothing has been able to trump them and come back or fight against them. Um,
I'm so excited by Troy's energy that I signed up for one, and we're
mm,
going to be doing, you know, some sessions coming down the road because you know, as energy workers, it, you know, even if you don't have, you know, things attached to you, getting new, fresh energy in think of it like a massage. You know, like for me, it's like an energetic massage. It's like, ah, yes, things I don't have to do myself. It's just,
mhm,
you know, like allowing and being connected in that unity type consciousness to allow somebody who's done the work to, you know, be that conduit for a beautiful energy to come through them. Also will say, you know, like be cautious who you let work on you, but you know, getting to know Troy, I have full faith in his abilities.
yeah. I like to think that angelic Reiki is actually feels to me more like a spa day. But yeah, it's like refreshing your whole energy body, your soul. It helps to work on and clear out past life issues if you have any, if you haven't worked on them already. The angels know exactly what you need. I've observed, I think in every session. every angelic Reiki session I've given that um, an angel or a spirit team even um, then presents itself to the person receiving it. So I offer those, especially in 3, 6, and 9 session packages. The more you go, then just the more awake your energy becomes. Um, each of the what are called siddhas start to awaken gradually, doing that type of clearing and attuning to divine energy. Um, so anyway, peacefulrain.com is where you can find me and my work. All of my socials are linked up there. The angelic invocation videos are something I love doing. The next one will be with Archangel Raziel. For those of you who know him, I'm
Oh man.
excited to get that
Oh
started.
man.
But
The
yeah,
keeper
each
of
one,
mysteries, huh?
yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's
He's
gonna
one of
be
my
powerful.
personal healing angels. So I'm excited to finally get that started. But yeah, each one of these I have fun with. I listen to them. It's not just me
Mhm.
regurgitating stuff. I incorporate a bit of research I do about angels and what's known about them, but I also mix in and channel specific words and elements and phrases that they've taught me that I I continue to hear from them, that it's a consistent theme and story that they keep telling me. Anyway, Joshua,
Awesome. What a journey.
um,
I know I could keep you talking forever here. I'll stop
yeah,
now.
yeah, for real. But that just shows that we have so much more to talk about. So let's sign off for now. And I wish everyone resplendent joy and prosperity and miracles and peace.